George H. W. Bush has described the current U.S. president as a blowhard who is driven by a certain ego. Mr. Bush, who voted for Hillary Clinton in last year's election, reportedly made the criticisms in historian Mark Updegrove's coming book The Last Republicans. In the book, he and his son George W., both former presidents of the U.S., talk about why they think their Republican successor is not fit for office. According to reports, Mr. Bush Sr. told the author in May last year, "I don't like Trump. I don't know much about him, but I know he's a blowhard. And I'm not too excited about him being a leader." Image George W. Bush with his Democrat predecessor Bill Clinton. Mr. Bush Sr., 93, and his son, 71, were the 41st and 43rd presidents of the U.S., both Republicans and split by Democrat Bill Clinton. The book follows a speech by George W. Bush in which he warned that bigotry, white supremacy and falsehoods were coarsening the tone of the U.S. and threatening its democracy. In the speech in New York last month, Mr. Bush Jr. did not mention the president by name, but he was clearly criticizing the current administration and its policies. Mr. Bush Jr. left his ballot blank in the election and said in the book that Mr. Trump doesn't know what it means to be president. He said he had been surprised Mr. Trump had won the election, also expressing surprise in his lack of humility and inability to recognize his own limitations. He said, "As you know from looking at my family, humility is a certain heritage, that's what they expect, and we're not seeing that in Trump." Image Mr. Bush Sr., 93, and his son, 71, were the 41st and 43rd presidents of the U.S. He also said Mr. Trump had failed to surround himself with more knowledgeable people, a key part of being president. After Mr. Trump had described himself as his own advisor, Mr. Bush had said, "Wow, this guy really doesn't understand the job of president." Mr. Updegrove said the younger Bush had inspired the title of his book, sharing a fear before the election that he would be the last Republican president. White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders said in a statement the American people voted to elect an outsider who is capable of implementing real, positive, and needed change instead of a lifelong politician beholden to special interests. If they were interested in continuing decades of costly mistakes, another establishment politician more concerned with putting politics over people would have won. Mr. Bush Jr. also refuted claims that his Vice President Dick Cheney and Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had controlled the White House from behind the scenes, telling Mr. Updegrove that they didn't make one FG decision.